Hey there, friends. Welcome back to As a Man Thinketh on UNDISCLOSED TV. So as you remember, when Helene hit, there were a lot of rumors floating around, rumors from, ammunition plants polluting the areas to FEMA workers not inspecting certain people's homes or coming to help certain groups of people. And a lot of these rumors were passed off by the big media as conspiracy theories, false information, dangerous false information.
Donald Trump landed in storm-ravaged Georgia today and almost immediately began lying about the federal government's response to Hurricane Helene, the deadliest storm to hit the United States mainland since Hurricane Katrina. As the Southeast is still reeling from the deaths of 218 people at least and immeasurable destruction, the former president falsely claimed there isn't enough money for hurricane relief.
It's been a terrible response from the White House. They're missing $1 billion that was used for another purpose. We're missing $1 billion they gave them to the migrants that came in, and now we don't have the money. We'll do it, but they don't have the money to take care of. That's why they're giving you lousy treatment in North Carolina.
Now, all of this is coming after Trump accused the administration of also going out of its way to not help Republican areas, a notion that was debunked by Republican governors.
As we know now, the state of Florida has opened an investigation into FEMA after the Daily Wire discovered that one of the FEMA officials was sending out emails and directives to employees telling them to avoid Trump homes where people were advertising for Trump. In a statement, FEMA said, FEMA helps all survivors regardless of their political preference or affiliation, and we are deeply disturbed by this employee's actions. While we believe this is an isolated incident, we have taken measures to remove the employee from their role. So this employee has since gone on to a podcast and further explained that what she was telling her workers to do was a FEMA-wide policy to avoid Trump supporters.
They all alleged that these actions were made on my own recognizances and that it was for my own political advances. FEMA always preaches avoidance first and then de-escalation. So this is not isolated. This is a colossal event of avoidance, not just in the state of Florida, but you will find avoidance in the Carolinas.
Only she said that they were telling them to avoid Trump supporters because of potential conflict. So they were profiling people based on their political views and saying those people are dangerous. It's nothing we haven't heard before from this administration. It's a good thing they're lame ducks now, right? Well, it wouldn't surprise you, though, that another employee has come forward about FEMA's practices of ignoring homes that have Trump supporter signs in front of them. And apparently this goes back to 2019 on some of the things that I've heard. They said that a lot of it has to do with FEMA's response through DEI practices, diversity, equity, and inclusion. And I played a video on here shortly after Helene where some of the FEMA administrators were talking about this concept of DEI and fund management. Where are those funds going? You hear about these people receiving $1,000, $5,000 for their home that's been completely destroyed. Then you hear of some other people receiving $30,000. How is FEMA actually distributing the funds? I think that this investigation should go a lot further and not just, are they skipping over houses or had they been skipping over houses, but how are they allocating FEMA response funds to people based on race or political preferences? Before I go too much further, I just wanted to remind you guys that the Meet My Neighbor Productions, which is our nonprofit's Hurricane Helene relief auction, is going to be December 6th through 7th. We do have a cash fundraising goal. We are only about 10% of the way to that goal, and we're almost in mid-November. So definitely check out our Hurricane Helene relief page on our website. Make a donation, even $5. Donate your Starbucks tomorrow to the Hurricane Helene Relief Fund. And this goes to members of the ag community who fall short of Hurricane Helene relief. I know that there's a lot of people out there. There are a lot of groups like us out there that are also trying to be more specific with the areas that we're helping out with. And that's important because it allows us to go in and target specific people and really make an impact. Anyway, take a moment, donate $5. donate $20, whatever it is that you can do, and help us bring some relief to farmers. Farmers have lost a lot, and they are not going to be covered by insurance. And here's the thing is, we hear a lot of people talk about, this is a relocation of our population, this, that, and the other thing. But, if we're not willing to step in when things like this happen and help these people out, then we have nothing to complain about. I firmly believe that charity and goodwill should be coming from the private industry and not the government. And it's reasons like this with FEMA that I think that you cannot have a government agency controlling funds and resources to recovery. It just doesn't work. Their role should be very minimal. Anyway, let's talk about the Radford ammunitions plant off of New River real quick.
Contamination concerns with the Radford Army ammunition plant. Last week, our Target 7 team told you that totes containing 3,500 gallons of chemicals were lost during flooding from Hurricane Helene.
And, what's interesting about this is nobody knew about it, at least, officially, until November 7th. They pulled a meeting together of a very small handful of people, and then the Virginia state newspaper put out a memo on it on November 8th.
13 containers with potentially hazardous chemicals were swept away from the Radford Army ammunition plant during Hurricane Helene. But it wasn't until November 7th, nearly 6 weeks later, that community members learned about it. BAE Systems, which operates the plant, revealed the news at a quarterly meeting.
So this is a ways after Hurricane Helene, and they're just now telling people that the Radford ammunition plant lost some harmful chemicals in the New River, and they don't know where they are. Dibutyl phthalate, DBP, can cause a variety of health issues, including and short-term inhaling or coming into contact with DEP can irritate eyes, nose, and throat. Other short-term effects include nausea, vomiting, dizziness, and headache. Probably a lot of people feel that on a regular basis. Long-term effects, damage to the liver and kidneys, teratogen in humans, meaning that it can damage a developing fetus and male reproductive glands. It could impact your nervous system. So DPB is a rather serious chemical, if you think about it.
Despite officials saying they don't believe there's a threat to the public after potentially thousands of gallons of chemicals were released into the New River, residents that live nearby say they are still concerned.
As a mother of 3 that lives in this area, drinks from this water source, as we all do, it's very disheartening and very concerning.
So it wasn't just DBP chemicals that they had lost. Now, these were in barrels. It's close to 3,500 gallons when you consider the amount of gallons of this chemical were in each of these barrels. But the plant also lost over 120,000 gallons wastewater and 700 gallons of diesel fuel. Now, the ammunitions plant actually notified the EPA back on October 14th, which was still 2 weeks after the fact. They had been looking for these barrels up and down the river by helicopter, and when they couldn't find them, they filed a report with the EPA. Two of the 4 barrels had been damaged and leaked chemicals out into the New River. 2 of the barrels had been found whole, but they can't find the other 9 or 10 barrels of this chemical that have disappeared in the river. So they disclosed it to the EPA on October 14th, and it was kept secret pretty much until November 7th, 2 days after the elections. In my opinion, a lot of this was to cover up what was going on out there before the elections, to wait until less people were talking about Hurricane Helene, so that the news wouldn't travel quite as far, but we're talking about it, aren't we? But this could have some large impacts on a lot of people. I mean, if you look at where the New River flows, it actually flows to the north in that location. But if you look at where the New River flows, it flows through farmland, it flows through a lot of populated areas. It impacts a lot of water intake systems. This is the same type of pollution, same type of crises that we've seen in East Palestine and other industrial sites around the United States. Now, I'm not saying that the United States shouldn't take industry seriously. What I'm saying is that we should also take the environmental impact of these areas seriously. And this is, this ammunition plant is actually talking about or requesting, there's a hearing coming up, to have more hazardous waste shipped to their plant for processing so they can put it into these ammunitions. I think it's also important to note that the Radford ammunitions plant has been correlated to a lot of cancer-causing emissions and things like that over the past several years. This is a pretty nasty industrial site that's right there on the New River, and it got completely flooded. I'm wondering if there are other chemicals that we just don't know about yet, and I think everybody else should wonder that too. I mean, they've disclosed these 13 or 14 barrels, but even in their environmental disclosure, they didn't say anything about, the wastewater or the 700 gallons of diesel, all of which, in my perspective, are pollutants. What else could have possibly been washed away at an ammunitions plant? Anyway, guys, that is a story to pay attention to, and prayers go out to those who are living in Virginia and anywhere downriver on the New River, really. And the New River branches off into a couple other rivers. So this is a story that I think we're going to stop hearing about because nobody ever wants to know about it. And the long-term effects are one of those things where if they can get it disclosed now, then cover it back up again. Nobody talks about it. Then in 10, 20 years, when people start suffering from it, they won't know who to blame or remember how it happened. We have a short attention span. But that's why I do these videos, is I want people to be aware of these things, to know what's going on out there and know that there are lies that are being fed to you every day by legacy media. I mean, when people, residents, first started coming out saying that their ground was being polluted by an ammunition plant during Hurricane Helene floods, it was passed off almost immediately as a lie, as a fabrication, as a conspiracy theory. But that part is actually the truth. They just waited until after the elections to actually disclose it to the public. There's no telling how many people have been impacted by this, not knowing what was in that water until now. I will say, though, for most of the areas that have been flooded by Hurricane Helene, those rivers are polluted, the soils are contaminated. It's going to take a significant amount of cleanup. It's going to take time. It's going to take, activity from microbials. And really, the faster we can get people back to farming that land, the healthier it will become. But it's going to take a while to see these areas get back to what they used to be. Anyway, guys, stay tuned for As a Man Thinketh. I'll have some more post-election coverage coming up. I've been taking my time on that, trying to see who gets appointed to what positions. I think it would be interesting to talk about the Department of Agriculture. I also think it would be interesting to talk about, in the Department of Interior, the BIA, Bureau of Indian Affairs. As you know, 65% of Native Americans, Indigenous Americans, voted for Donald Trump in this election, which is a huge number, the highest demographic that he had voting for him. Now, they're only 1% of America, but it's a growing population. And I'd like to talk a little bit why that happened and, what I think he can do on his policies to have a solid representation of the agricultural industry and reformative changes to small farming, small ag. But that's a whole other video. And I've been waiting to see, what kinds of people he starts pointing to places, because that's going to be the tall tale, sign of what actually comes out of this. So anyway, stay tuned for that, and have a great week.